Hi, Misha here, and you may have noticed my video output on this personal channel has been a little slow. That's because I've been forced to upgrade, update, get a new computer. Other things have happened in life. I've got a lot of black box material, but for example, we had cold weather and we lost heat for a day, so yeah, we can talk about that another time. But kind of what's been consuming most of my attention for the last week or so has been ordering and getting a new computer. And so I thought I would walk you through the systems I've used over the last nearly 2 decades and how I use a computer to be accessible. Thought that might be fun. So this will be maybe a not entirely black box. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. With that, let's jump into what is decidedly not a new computer. For those who know me, you know that I mostly do firearms. Although on my personal channel here, I will often do sci-fi, which has been an interest of mine since I was a little kid. Yeah, I grew up in the Star Wars generation, the original trilogy. And I found Star Trek when I was a little bit older, maybe 10, and was able to comprehend all the Shakespeare quotes. And then Next Generation came out, and at first I thought it was weird, then I loved it. I digress. Anyway, computers have also been a major part of my life for a very long time. That's because, well, I'm blind. They're accessible. And so my first talking computer was an Apple II, I believe it was an Apple IIe. And there was actually a box that came off of it that was kind of a vocalizer. It had a little knob on it. Also, cat content. This is Odie, the new kitten, for those who didn't know. He's been helping me move computers today and play with wires. How many wires did you make go missing today, Odie? Anyway, Apple IIe. And then I progressed on after that to the PC realm. Getting my first laptop, which was a PC. It was an old, was it a Toshiba? I think it was a Toshiba. And I remember it was a 386. Friends of mine had 286s. But in, I think it was 1989, I got that laptop because they thought it might be useful for me to use at school, for schoolwork. Cool. It was and it wasn't. This was early days for PC speech. Obviously, we're talking early DOS. I think it had DOS 4, maybe 5 at that point. And yeah, speech was a little chancy on there, but it did let me type. You know, I had WordPerfect, that kind of thing on there. And it was a good computer, but it was limited by laptops. So eventually, when I was going into junior high, so I would have been 12. I mean, my birthday is pretty early on in the year, so I would have been turning 13. I got my first PC desktop a year or two later, and that was a blazing 486, and it had one of these, like this one does, newfangled, well, this is a DVD player, CD-ROM drives, and it was a double speed. Woohoo! It's kind of funny how you never really forget your first, and it was a 486, 33 megahertz DX. Not an SX, a DX. And I remember upgrading it to a 66 megahertz. Because back then, buying computers, we tinkered with them. We almost had to, because late 80s through really the late 90s, computer tech hardware was just going. That computer started off with a whopping, and it really was, I'm not being sarcastic, 4 megabytes of RAM, because my speech program sucked up at least a meg of that, sometimes more, only leaving 2 to 3 megs for programs. And I remember it was, after having it, wasn't very long, 6 months maybe, a year, I was getting out of memory messages. Back then in DOS, if you had one, it would send you to a DOS prompt with a flashing screen saying, ran out of memory. So at that time, I had picked up that computer from my local Radio Shack that was run by Actually, it was run by two classmates' dads. One was the owner, and another worked for him. He was also a preacher. They were really good people, and the old school computer types. You know, you'd see them in the back room, and then you'd hear cussing, and then there would be a puff of smoke come out of the room. Them were the days. But they really helped me, and I printed out the error message, and they said, "Yeah, need more memory." So I had to go to 8 megs. And I remember very clearly, keep in mind, I'm in junior high, maybe 8th grade at this point at the most. And I did have a job working at a family business for all of like $5 an hour, which was honestly above minimum wage. So it was 4 extra megs of memory, $100 each. Yowzers. Well, that computer only had a 220 megabyte hard drive. And so while I was at it, I added a second hard drive, which was a whopping 540 megabytes, so roughly half a gigabyte hard drive. That was another roughly $400. So essentially I had an $800 bill. Christmas money and birthday money was spent early that year, and I may have begged and borrowed from family. But I was learning. Wouldn't be long before I'd do that upgrade to that computer. I also managed to blow out the motherboard on a Christmas morning by plugging in a peripheral wrong. Yeah, talk about ruining your Christmas. You got to plug in something new, and I think I was plugging in the keyboard port because it was kind of a keyboard interrupt. You know, you plugged it in, you plugged in the keyboard. I did something wrong, or maybe just something went wrong. It completely foobarred the motherboard. So I got to call Radio Shack, and this is a year or two later, the day after Christmas, saying, my computer no worko. And at this point, they knew that if I was saying that, I knew what I was talking about enough that it was bad. And yeah, new motherboard had to be put in. So that became kind of a Frankenstein's computer. And I remember when we got Windows 95 coming in, and I put it on there, and it had enough to run Windows 95, sort of. 8 megs of RAM, at this point a 46, 66 megahertz DX. We've got 2 hard drives totaling nearly a whopping gigabyte. By the way, around this time, 1996, 97, a friend got a real 1 gigabyte hard drive, and we were amazed at the cavernous storage. Again, when programs were only a few megabytes, and we're still installing a lot from floppy disks, it mattered. It really did. And of course, programs took more and more. With Windows 95, we were still kind of using it part-time. A lot of people, I know J-Ro included, still preferred Windows 3.1 because it was less of a resource hog. It wasn't until 98, Windows 98, especially SE 2nd edition, that we started to really transition over to Windows full-time. By the way, this here is Caesar. He's a pen holder. I don't normally buy gimmicky stuff on Amazon, but it cracked me up. Very heavy too. He sits on my computer usually. So we're getting to the end of the 20th century. So for 98, I once again go to my second notebook computer, as they're starting to be called now. And that was actually my first Dell. Remember it very clearly. Shopped around, and at that time, this would have been early 1998, I was moving away from home and needed a new computer. And at this time, laptops were really reaching almost as good as desktops. And Dell was an up-and-coming brand. It wasn't that old then. And we would build it up on their website. I think I must have had some scholarship money, because I remember I had a price point, and I did go a little all out on that guy. It was a 233 megahertz Pentium 2? Yeah, I think it was right after it was Pentium MMX, and then they went to Pentium 2. I think that was the big deal. I remember it cost quite a bit more to go from 200 to 233 megahertz, but I paid for it because I knew it's a laptop, so you're not going to be upgrading it. And I, honest to God, don't remember the RAM on it. By this point, though, it was, 32 or 64 megabytes, something like that. 128 was on the horizon, which was kind of the max that 98 could utilize anyway, as best I can remember. But Got that in 98, and that was a good system. With laptops, though, your limiting factor tends to be your battery life and things like that. They just don't last as long. So in 2000, to kind of go with it, I picked up another desktop. Keep in mind, my previous desktop was bought around 92. So yeah, and I kind of used them both for a little bit in 1998. But when 98 SE came out and the desktop couldn't run it, I knew that I needed to do something. And this 2000 desktop is kind of important to my story today. It was the first time I was kind of able to go balls to the wall, all out. It's a lot of fun. And this one I built with help from a friend, an older gentleman. I guess you can almost call him a mentor. But we got all the parts together and we built it. It was an AMD, my first AMD. But what was critical about it, it was a 1 gigahertz processor. That was nuts back then. 128 gigs of 128 megs of memory, and I don't remember the hard drive on it, but it would have been at least a terabyte, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm gonna do that a lot. Oh well, personal channel fun times. At least 1 gig, probably 2. This is when DVD players were a thing, so it had a DVD player. I'd actually put a DVD player in my old desktop. I remember buying it at Best Buy with Christmas money and getting 5 free DVDs, one of which was Stargate. Fun fact. Another one was Die Hard. So they actually gave some really good films. And I bought Star Trek First Contact because it just had come out on DVD. So that would have been 97. Anyway. And that machine sucked. I'm going to be honest. It was too advanced, early gen, but what we really had trouble with was cooling. Now, it wasn't entirely that computer's fault because I was in a dorm without air conditioning. I had fans, lots of fans. Even my dog at the time, Brandy, overheated. And it just didn't do good. It was an unstable machine, unfortunately. When it worked great. It was fast as snot, but it just didn't work. So, and I was kind of using the laptop as best I could, but remember how I said a minute ago, laptops have kind of a shelf life? Well, by late 2001, the 3-year-old, nearly 3.5-year-old battery was giving up the ghost. It was an early lithium battery in that Dell laptop. I remember because you could either buy the nickel cadmium or the lithium, and I went with lithium. What was also cool is that old laptop had PCI slots, sure, but it also the little cards you could slide in and out. But it also had 2 bays in the front, and it came with interchangeable things. You could put in a 3.5-inch disk drive. Finally, we got rid of 5.25, and it had a CD player. I don't think it was a DVD. Could have been. And it had an extra battery, so I could actually have 2 batteries on board that computer, one in each front bay. Or you could take one of the bays. I remember actually buying an empty bay and putting a little hard drive in it, so you could accessorize it, which made it really flexible. It was also a good place to store 420 treats. Trust me, no police officer back in the day looked inside a hard drive bay in a laptop. I'm glad we're on the personal channel. I'm also glad it's actually legal now in Arkansas. So, screw it. Statute of limitations. That was 25 years ago. Anyway, laptop. But I had some grant money, student money, because I was getting into grad school soon and everything else. So I remember rather reluctantly, after having spent so much on that desktop already, buckling down and just buying another pre-built. And since I had such a good experience with the Dell laptop back in 98 and early 2002, I bought a Dell desktop. Not this one, but not far removed, if we're being honest. This is Earl, of course. And so that was my first Dell desktop, and that gets us into sort of the modern era, kinda. Now, the old AMD, what I did with it, since it was only 2 years old, not even quite at that time, I took it home to my parents' house because my laptop wasn't really reliable. when I was visiting home, I would have a desktop there, and in an air-conditioned environment, being only lightly used for a weekend, maybe once every month or two, it did okay, just not as a daily driver. So I didn't completely waste it, and it probably cycled over to a family member after that. So, waste not, want not. I'm definitely a big proponent of either reselling or recycling. E-waste is a real thing, and it sucks, and I just hate being wasteful. So in 2002, I bought my first Dell desktop, and it was from their business division because my family owns a business. I used that. I forget it was one of the Inspiron or whatever brand was under their business, and that's really where I kind of fell in love with that whole business line because it wasn't the flashiest, but damn were they stable and they were cooled well. I remember when I was ordering it though, there was this newfangled thing that had not come out too much earlier called Windows XP. I had 98 SE. I was okay with it, worked pretty well. But for whatever reason, I decided to give XP a go. And since it was a Dell business machine, it came with XP Pro. And normally I don't like early adoption, and I guess it wasn't too early, but still it seemed early. And that would have been my first XP machine, and I frickin' flippin' loved it. Ran with that till the wheels fell off, frankly. In fact, that's what this machine here replaced. We'll get to in a second. Now, there was another laptop, you're seeing a trend here, that I picked up when I was ending grad school. I think it was 2005. And I'm going to be honest, I just saw it in the Dell store that was at my university. And it was a Latitude, and it was one of their ultra thin, and what was it? It had been a Centrino system, those high efficiency processors. Only 1.2 gigahertz, but it, for what I need, I mean, I don't game, doing schoolwork, and it was so good on the battery, and it had a lot of cool accessories like a little docking station, and I still had the little PCI cards you could slide in, and I actually picked up a modem card for it that let me get online pretty much anywhere in the country that had cell service. And that was back when you could get basically unlimited data because they didn't care. They charged you by the minute on phones still, but they didn't care about data. So that was not just a Dell business computer, but it also was a tough computer. It had the metal hinges. I love that thing. It impressed, even after it was kind of out of date, it still impressed people with how small and light it was and the fact that it had a metal shell. And it's good I got it because I ended up traveling abroad quite a bit, 2006, 2007, and it went with me everywhere. And it survived until it didn't one day at an airport. I actually don't know what happened to it, but when I got back from a trip and tried to turn it on, it was dead as a doornail. I thought, well, maybe the batteries wore out, but no, even plugging it in. Luckily, they had a 3-year warranty, which it was still within. This would have been probably early '08. And it's like, hey, the computer's dead. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. They said, well, we can send someone out to fix it. Or if it has an accident, we can replace it. Now, there are a few things it doesn't cover on that policy. Fire, theft, and I think flood might have been it. Or maybe flood, but maybe water. Basically, you had to show them the computer. You couldn't just say, oops, it's gone. It's like, well, what if it were left on top of a Range Rover? Incidentally, my roommate at the time and good friend even today drove a Range Rover, and we accidentally drove off and it went tumbling down the road. Theoretically, that would be covered. Isn't it funny how life works out? We accidentally left it on the roof getting in the car, and we live in a hilly area. It did cartwheels. And Dell replaced it. Now, at this point, what I did with that system, because money was tight for me in '08, I actually sold the new system I got from them. It was actually a refurb system of equal value. That's fine. I ended up selling it, maybe doing some partial trading to a good friend, Ace. And he used it for quite a while. But I got some value out of it, otherwise I would not have. And I was still running that old XP desktop, which was, at this point, thankfully, hardware tech has slowed down. Back in the day, in the 90s, if you had told me I had to run a machine that was 6-7 years out of date, Earligan, I would have flipped out. But at this point, it's the software that's progressing. But it's mostly gaming, GPUs and all that. I don't give a crap. My text-to-speech doesn't use GPUs, so that was fine. Until I wasn't. That desktop, it still worked. In fact, I think I gave it to my wife because I got married and whatnot. But it was starting to show its age by 2009, and that's how we get to this old girl. Well, I was gonna neatly plop it, but I don't know. I'm blind. You'll be okay. Here. So because I had some small business loans and whatnot in 2010, it might have been late 2009, somewhere in there. I remember I was married. I remember where we were living, so that narrows it down. I looked around and ended up calling up Dell Business and ordering this computer. So I was on a budget, which I pretty much had been. The last time I really could have free reign on a computer was back in 2000, but I kind of learned my lesson. Nice, stable machine. I don't remember the exact specs. I remember it was still XP. They offered Windows Vista, I think was the thing at the time. It might have been early days for 7, but I think Dell Business, it was either Vista or XP. I went with XP because that's kind of, XP Pro was still really doing fine at this time. And it was an Intel i3 processor. I don't remember the gigahertz. And I don't remember the RAM. Probably 128. No, we would. Yeah, I guess I don't know, guys. Where we would have been at this point with XP. I don't remember. It's been too long. Because this computer, I can't just open it up. It's been salvaged for hardware, upgraded. There's not a whole lot actually inside it anymore. But when I first started making YouTube videos, this is the machine I used. And it's a good setup. Worked well. Monitor, like I ever cared. This one probably came with this computer. It doesn't matter. Probably dirty. Not too bad. And I've always liked wireless keyboards. And these Logitechs I've used for years and years, just buying a new one every year or two when the old ones wear out. They're, I think it's AA battery powered. And they're not Bluetooth. They're Logitech kind of radio frequency, which gave really good range. And they did come with the mouse, which I used, well, never. Sometimes people would use mine. And you might be thinking, what about sound? Now, if I was playing music, I'd use speakers, but for my sound, I use these headphones. In the early days, I tried going fancy wireless headphones. I remember I had a couple of pairs of Sonys and whatnot that were over $100. They worked fine, but my wife and I ended up using these both. These are just cheap little things. Note that there's actually Braille, L and R on these. What are these, RCA, I think? We've bought so many of these over the years. They're cheap, especially if you buy them on sale. And we'll buy actually 2 pairs. One to keep on the charger and one to use. And they use AAA batteries and rechargeables. So, like, these are starting to get to the end of their life cycle. So right now they've got commercial batteries in them. But when they're new, and they will last a couple of years each. So it's just kind of part of a wear part. And they actually have 3 channels. So for a long time, I would actually plug in multiple things to them and have like TV on the right speaker and computer on the left. Or, as I've actually been doing this past week, switching over from old computer to new, putting one computer on channel 1 and another computer on channel 2. Sometimes expensive is good. Sometimes kind of cheap and reliable is good. And that's what's really served me well for the keyboard and headphones here. But this old computer did great. It made it through a move. The only hardware failure we had is the hard drive out about 2013. It happens, an old, platter drive. Dell, much to their credit, still supported it in the warranty. And instead of sending, this is back when they'd still send a tech to your home, but we had a local guy, this is when we still lived in my hometown, that was Dell certified. And I said, well, this guy lives here, and give him it. It's like, oh yeah, he can do the work. So they just mailed him a new hard drive, and he took the old one that was busted and recovered a good bit of data. I think it was over 90% data recovery. And so he, set up the new hard drive on the system, and it kept chugging along for another couple of years. We moved in 2014, which is why this stayed with me. But in 15, we ran into a problem. XP was no longer being supported, and it first didn't work on places like Netflix, Hulu, but then when YouTube no longer supported it, I didn't have a choice. Now, I could have tried upgrading this software, but I've never found great luck upgrading software on a system. I think that goes back to me learning my lesson with 95. It just doesn't, especially when your system's already several years old. The resources usually aren't there, and an upgrade install is just never as good as a fresh install on a system meant for it. So I was trying to think when it was. It was either late 15, early 16. We had to go to another desktop. At this point, I pretty much have given up on laptops. I'm more stationary. I'm not traveling the world. It's just not really a need thing. And hey, at least at this point, prices on computers are way down. That first Apple II was like $5,000, as was the first desktop back in the day. At this point, you can pick up a solid business machine for under $1,000 from Dell. I shopped around again, but by this point, I've got good trust in Dell, especially their warranty. Remember, we're 2015, 2016. So that's where I go again, using the business, and that gets us to our next box. All right, changing out the boxes, and yeah, I'm still sticking with Dell. And this is probably dirty, because it has set by a window, which I like to leave open. Also, the cats, namely Hobo, love rubbing up on the front of this. But yeah, this is the one I picked up in late 15, 16. And I was finally forced to go from Windows XP Pro to Windows 7 Pro. Didn't want to. Previously, going from 95 to 98 to XP, I was fine. But I liked XP. I was familiar with it. It worked well with my TTS. It wasn't too much of a resource hog. But I had to learn to love the bomb. And thankfully, I skipped Vista. Previously, I'd skipped Millennium Edition, ME, Windows Me. So I've noticed this kind of leapfrogging works pretty well for Windows operating systems. And it took me a bit to learn 7. But once I did, it's been good. Still using the same old monitor. Still using the same old keyboards. Changing as little as I can. And still was pretty much on a budget, but a little more with the business. This is a Intel Core i5, 3.2 gigahertz, quad core, 4-channel or whatever. I guess it'd be 8 channels. And it had a 1 terabyte hard drive, which I was actually surprised. I don't remember putting that big of a... I guess it was a good deal, because I thought I had a half terabyte in it, but it's actually a 1. But when you do video stuff, you suck up a 1 all the darn time. So I actually have 3 external hard drives that I rotate in and out, partially for backup, but mostly just because, yeah, they're all more than half full. 2 of them are 4 gigs, and one of them is a 6? Excuse me, not gigs, terabytes. So what's that get me up to? About 14 terabytes external plus 1 terabyte, 15 terabytes. Again, some of it's redundant, and they're not totally full, so realistically I've got about 8 terabytes of data. Well, now 7, because I made it oopsie earlier, which we'll talk about in a minute. Either way, quite a bit of data. It has a decent amount of RAM, 12 gigs, but that's kind of what you have to have at this point. Good, not over-the-top machine for when it was built, but I upgraded where I could within reason, and it wasn't too expensive. Again, around $1,000, $1,100. And this is what all the videos up until this point have been processed on. I've actually found that VSDC is the best program I can use for my TTS. Now, for better work, early on, Jay did the editing, and in the last few years, JRO has. But for more simple videos and personal channel videos like this, it's just me, and you get what you get. But even now, this system works very well for what it is, but it was getting a little squirrely. For one thing, the cats broke this front thing, and by cats, I probably mean hobo. No big deal. That could be fixed or tossed out. I don't know when the last time I opened up the DVD player is. I can't remember where the button's at. Oh, that's, I think it flops down. I super don't. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, push that. Yeah, that's how often I open it. I don't even remember. Power's down here. Still would freeze on me occasionally. That's just the nature of text-to-speech. But all in all, good system. But we're kind of back where we are here. And I knew this was coming last year. First, I started getting out-of-memory errors. I was using up essentially all 12 gigabytes. And you'd think during video editing, but not necessarily. Just typically having multiple windows open. My speech is upgraded versions. Sucked up more and more gigabytes. I think minimum now it needs 4. Recommended it needs itself, not for the system, but it needs 8. And you can imagine between 4 and 8 usage, it just wasn't getting it here with 12. Now, luckily, it doesn't need a whole lot of space on a hard drive. It's under a gig for the program, so that's not a big deal. And the CPU usage is pretty low. I think it only needs like a 3 gigahertz processor or something like that. But the memory is what it really does, because it's interfacing everything, and it has to be running 100% of the time active. But yeah, this is the machine I've been running. Well, there is one little exception. Back in January of 2020, right as everything was good and crazy, I kind of thought about getting another laptop. The last one I bought was 15 years before that. And I was starting to travel a bit more again. Well, I thought so. And then you know what happened. Even though I knew traveling would be curtailed, I didn't know for how long at that time. I knew that prices were going up on computers. So I called them before they went up and bought this guy. Pretty slimline laptop. And since I was running a desktop, I didn't need a powerhouse for video editing, which actually turned out to be good. No, I just needed something I could browse emails with, all that good stuff. And at this point, Windows 7's out. I had to go to Windows 10 Pro on this laptop. And I thought, I don't need to put a lot of power in it. So it's just like a 1.6 gigahertz Pentium meant for, battery efficiency, excuse me. It only has 8 gigabytes of RAM. And I don't know why I did this. It only has a 500 gigabyte, half a terabyte hard drive. I probably thought, well, I'm wrong. This is a quarter terabyte, 250 gigabytes. I probably thought, well, I'm not doing video editing on it. And for that, you would think that would be enough. And this is what learned me my lesson. Now, this has been a good laptop. What I didn't really enjoy about it was Windows 10. And this has 10 Pro. But, guys, I've got just my speech, Windows 10, and really not much else on here. I've got maybe 50 gigabytes of music, my music library, which is probably the biggest thing. It only has 50 gigs free of memory. 200 gigs are used up. And it seems like nearly 100 of that is just system files and crud. And that really shows. And remember what I was telling you about the out-of-memory errors on this with 12 gigs? I was hoping maybe Windows 10 would be more efficient. It runs, it's not crashing, but I can tell it's a lot slower. 8 gigs is just not enough. I kind of underpowered myself a little bit here. I still take it. It still works. Still not regretting it. Unfortunately, I didn't do as much traveling as possible, at least up until last year, 2022. I ended up taking it about once a month, so it's working fine. I don't know what I'll do next when it's time for a new laptop. No complaints, but I think I've learned my lesson with power here. You also might be wondering why Pentium. That's because, well, there's nothing wrong with AMD. It just seems like the makers of text-to-speech software, they kind of build the software to work with an Intel chipset. And I've just noticed it runs a little slicker, less crashes. You will still get crashes with Intel stuff. And again, I'm not gaming, so that doesn't really much matter. But memory management does matter. And as far as I understand, Intel is generally better at memory management than AMD stuff. But I could be wrong. And that gets us to today. With Windows 7 far out of date. If you're wondering how long you could use Windows 7 effectively before you just can't use it anymore, 2023. This seems to be the cutoff point, because a few weeks ago I started getting messages on Google Chrome saying I can no longer install updates because I'm running 7. I have to at least upgrade to Windows 10. Those out of memory errors I've been getting, a lot of things aren't serviceable, and of course there are security risks with Windows 7 Pro, and I'm not an idiot. And this system has been running constantly for business purposes on nearly 24/7, not to mention surviving a tornado last year. I'm getting sketched out that the hard drive might go out. It's still an old rotational hard drive. Again, speed's not important for me there. So I don't want to push my luck, and I'm going to have to at least upgrade to Windows 10 with it. I don't think 11 would even work. It just doesn't have the resources. And think about 10. Even Microsoft is saying, oh, we're going to support it up to 2025. That's only 2 years from now. So maybe a little longer. Plus, I've got experience with 10 on this computer. I wasn't crazy about it. I didn't hate it as much as I thought I would. But again, I'm at least leapfrogging over Windows 8, Windows 8.1, because piss on that, as my grandfather used to say. So, what am I doing now? What's got me so excited over the last week? Little behind the scenes for you. I stopped to change out batteries because, I can't tell how low one's getting. And the little screw that holds the GoPro to the stick, the little tripod / handle, broke. I knew it was getting cracked, and I have replacements, but I've engineered this to work for the rest of this video. Computers, guys, spare parts, they love to do it. Anyway, here's the new system. I did this video today because I've been testing it for about 3 days and getting everything installed, and was about to put it back on my desk. Oh, I promise you my desk is all nice and neat, especially behind the monitor. It was a complete rat's nest. I literally just took the Dell box this came in and just pushed all the crap into it, figuring I'll sort it later. But I did dust and clean the desk off underneath because, again, this is relatively near a window, and on nice days I like to have the window open, and of course stuff blows in. So, what do we have here? I knew I had to update. My first choice was Windows 10 or 11. I went with 11. But I definitely went with 11 Pro because I read the differences. And even though there aren't a ton between Pro and Home, there are a few that really matter to me a lot, including controlling updates and all that. So I decided on that. Now, believe it or not, I wasn't going to go with Dell. I thought, okay, I've been using Dell since 1998. Except for that one AMD I built for myself in 2000. I'm going to try something new. But then I started looking. Most of the custom machines out there are true gaming machines. And I get it. There are some impressive, even to me, GPUs and gaming setups. Water-cooled and all that. If I could, I would. I'd enjoy gaming, at least certain games. I think I'd like RTS. I think I'd like strategy games, even if they're turn-based. Also, like build games, sim games. I'd love to play Flight Simulator. You know how much I like aircraft on this channel. I'd love the crap out of that, I'm sure. But I can't, so there's no reason to worry about it. I looked at multiple brands. J-Ro recommended iBuyPower, which I saw on a few other forums. And I looked at HP. I remember we kind of used to make jokes about Hewlett and Packard and Compaq and stuff in the 90s, but it seems like HP is doing pretty well these days as far as systems, just kind of pre-built. I considered buying all the parts, putting them together myself, but one, that would take time, and I didn't know how much longer I had with the old system before I'd just wake up one day and I couldn't log on to YouTube. I needed something relatively quick. Not tomorrow necessarily, but, within a month. Also, I was worried about compatibility, like sticking this RAM in this motherboard, putting this processor in this motherboard. Maybe I'm overthinking it, but it just seems like you're running into stuff more that way. Plus, no warranty. I'm not a warranty person by and large, but it's one of those things you only need it when you don't have it. So, even J-Ro reluctantly admitted after a time that Dell, when it comes to like more of a business and video editing PC, is about as good as anything. And the graphics card thing, he kept telling me, I get it. In his mind, the idea of building a computer or getting a computer without a graphics card is just counterintuitive. It really is. But I don't need one. And I researched to see if my TTS uses the GPU for anything. It does not. If anything, it actually could complicate, not impede or stop, but complicate use of the TTS. So with the Intel onboard graphics available, that should be enough. And again, I looked at AMD, I looked at Intel. I went with Intel again because A, speech is optimized for it. B, Intel's memory management still seems better. And C, man, the newer Intels the last couple of years seem to be pretty good, both on price and just what they can do. So Intel it was, and reluctantly Dell. Now I did change things up a bit. I actually didn't buy directly from Dell. I went with a vendor on Amazon, which was a little worrisome to me. And while I was a little trepidatious about opening the box, because you never know, just because something's sold as new. But the truth is, the system was basically $500 cheaper on Amazon on one of the deals because it was marked down than it would be on Dell's website. And part of it is I did buy kind of last year's tech. I learned my lesson with that AMD. In fact, this whole computer, it's lessons I've learned throughout this whole saga I've told you. So let's kind of break it down. And of all things, let's start with the keyboard because it's the first part I got in. After using those good but relatively entry-level Logitechs for years now, I decided to go with something a little nicer. But I stuck with Logitech. For one, this can do Bluetooth, but it also has their own kind of radio frequency as well. So you can use either or. I like that. Bluetooth is fine. I've got a Bluetooth wireless for that laptop. But the range on this Logitech's wireless is amazing. I can go literally anywhere in our house, which we don't live a big house, but it's about 2,000 square feet, and most anywhere in our yard, which is, half an acre. I like that. And more importantly, the accuracy is high. I was starting to notice with those old Logitechs that the accuracy, sometimes a key would like double type. If you've seen my comments and videos and you see like 2 A's or 2 D's in a row, that's not me hitting it twice. That's the keyboard kind of stuttering. Also, I was having kind of range problems. I don't know why, maybe interference from other electronic devices, but it's getting to the point I could barely reach our bedroom, which is kind of just across the hall from my office room. I wanted something better that I could roam with. That's me. I like being able to move. On top of that, the old one was a membrane keyboard. A couple of years back, I was in Best Buy, and they had some wireless mechanicals, or semi-mechanicals, and I really liked it. It reminded me of that old Apple IIe keyboard, and I thought that'd be neat. And I don't care if there's a little bit of a noise. For one thing, I'm wearing headphones most of the time. For another, my wife's office is across the house, so we don't bug each other. But I really like the fact that it's on-off, the accuracy's good. You don't have to like slam it, but you can also do it, and the speed's really good. So while I kept with Logitech, I ended up going to kind of the next step up. Now this isn't their highest end keyboard. It's like I got it on sale for $70. But I can tell you, going from $30 to 70, it's a world of difference. Also, previously, those other keyboards came with the wireless mouse. This had one as an option for another $20 or something, but I don't need it. I knew this computer would come with a wired mouse, so I'm just going to have this attached for once in a while when either my wife or someone who works with me needs a mouse. But the wired mouse that this comes with is great. I also love the fact that both keyboard and mice are just USB now. Back in the day, remember they had their own little serial special ports, and you could fry your motherboard with it. So yeah, this actually came in before the computer. I ordered them all. Actually, it was just the weekend before last. But we had snow and ice last week, and so everything got delayed a couple of days. The keyboard was the first to come in. Actually, right before the snow and ice, because it got here, I think, Monday, Tuesday. And I really like it. Even on the old computer, I noticed it was a little faster responding. Even though this says it's not compatible with Windows 7, I tried it out, and it was. And it uses batteries. They're removable too. But in my experience with the old ones, batteries last a year on these, even with a hard use. A couple of things that you may not think about. With my speech, I need a numpad. This is how I control the speech. This is read and stop reading, all this stuff. It's all here. There are some keyboard commands too. But I need this, and a lot of keyboards these days, especially laptops, don't have it. And using like a function key is not the same. But you need the num lock in the right position, turning it off, which drives my wife crazy. I have to use the keys up here, which I don't mind 1, 2, 3s. Sometimes getting all the way over to the 8, even after me using computers, keyboards for 25 years, more. I hate getting to the 8s and 9s. But yeah, I also like that there are duplicate function keys here. F6, F5, F4. They're actually very important keys in both Chrome and the old Internet Explorer. Keyboard commands, guys. That's what I use. Also, the keys here, page up, page down, begin line, start, end line, very important. Delete key, arrows. This is all very important to me. So, easy access and also well spread out. I like having a rest here, but I don't care if it's padded or not. That's fine. And this thing is a chunk. It is heavy, which you might think is a bad thing, but it's not. The old keyboards, being a little bit light, could fly off your lap or wherever you set them quite easily. This thing, you've got to really knock it, and you know it's there. I'm hoping it holds up. I don't normally buy warranties for things, but considering it was $70, I did pay like $6 extra for a 3-year warranty, just in case a cat does something to it or something gets spilt on it or a gun falls on it. I don't know. But yeah, my keyboard and mouse. I remember the old trackball mouses. Well, I did have a trackball for that Toshiba. But the old ball mouses and having to clean the lint out. What about the monitor? Well, because of new ports, my old monitor that's been with me for over a decade won't work. Now, you can probably get an adapter. I don't know. But it seemed time, just in case. And found this one on Amazon. I think it's classified as a gaming monitor. But I love how thin it is and light. It is metal backed. It does have backup speakers, which I don't hate in case my headphones go out. It's nice that I can hear my speech through this. Now, this is an HDMI monitor. This computer, because it doesn't have a graphics card, is like, what does it call it? DVI output. And I thought, well, shit. Here we are. The ice is just melting. We might have to go to Walmart or Best Buy to look for an adapter or a cable. But then I got to digging around in the box this computer came in, and I hadn't unpacked the mouse yet. Glad I did, because in the bag with the mouse was this. I think it's called DVI to HDMI adapter, supplied with the computer. And it seems to be a pretty good one. It's metal, fits very tight. You're not going to yank it out. So thanks, Dell, or whoever. You saved me a lot of headache. I was starting to sweat a bit, so that was able to let it plug in and go from there. I do like that you have audio and video on the same output now. That's pretty cool. Of course, this can also be plugged into a smart TV. I mean, the line between monitors and TVs today, TV, very blurred. So that's the peripherals. What about the box itself? To be fair, not much to look at. Looking at the various lines, I decided to go with an XPS 8950, 8950. This is the newer version replacing the 8940, and I really like some of the changes they've made. It's got a lot of internal room, and this is maybe the first computer I've had with an intake fan up here and an outtake, and it's got pretty good clearing and cooling, at least for non-graphics cards. And remember how I said on that laptop I kind of underpowered myself? I wasn't going to make that mistake again. In fact, I went a little overboard maybe for my purposes, but not as full overboard as I could go. J-Ro helped me with that a bit. But yeah, because I had the funds, because computers are cheap, and because I found this on sale, and because good business write-off, and you only had to buy one. Sometimes in the past I've had to buy two. Well, I indulged a little bit. And it's really the first time I've indulged myself on a computer since 2000 in that AMD. And I'm hoping, since this isn't a custom built, this is a pre-built, that it'll have a lot longer legs than that old system did. Because my last several Dells, say what you will about the company, they've lasted. So what's inside? Full disclosure, I was buying Dells before the dude, you're getting a Dell commercials. Oh, God, I hate stupid commercials, but no one wins more than Sonic. All right, so processor / motherboard. Of course, we're up to the 13th generation, and I did look at the Intel i9 13s, like the 913 900s, but I couldn't really see a point. That is full gaming, and I was kind of worried about stability and heat and cooling. I didn't want to go water cooling because my luck with water stuff is terrible. If anyone's going to get a water leak in anything, it's me. So I still wanted to stick with air cooling, and since I didn't need a GPU, that's not what I did. Also, you know, the 12th gen versus 13, I know 13 has some improvements, but they're very compatible. So I thought, you know, if I go to 12 gen here at the beginning of 2023, since it's been out for over a year, I can probably get a good deal, and sure enough, I did. So I ended up going with an i7, because actually reviews on i7s are really good. They say the i7 is as kind of good as a previous gen i9. And what I really liked about it, and it's something that gets totally overlooked, and something I learned about doing that AMD build, cache. The onboard cache was really good on this. This is 25 megs of cache on this motherboard, and some of them have 20, but even your i9s only bump, what, 30, 32? So you're not really cutting out a lot there, and I really like that. Another thing, DDR4 versus 5 compatibility. I wanted to go with 5. For one thing, I like the faster speeds. Also, I want to try to not future-proof it. That's kind of a fool's errand, but I wanted to have it with the newer tech so it was compatible, because I think we're going to see a division line there, and I don't want to get to where in a couple of years for some reason programs don't like DDR4, and this is after the price on DDR5 has fallen quite a bit. So I went with the i7, but I did do the 12700K. For one, the 12700, it's up to 4.9 gigahertz, down to about 3.5, 3.6. This is up to 5.0, plus it can be overclocked. I just wanted it. It didn't cost more, and there are a few advantages to that. Besides, you never know. I might want to do it in the future. It also has better cooling with the K, but I definitely couldn't go KF, which is the one that does not have integrated graphics, because I'm not running a GPU, so I needed a system that I knew had the integrated graphics. And even if you don't want to use that, I've heard that the KFs aren't as good for video editing as the Ks, and that's my primary system pusher on this is video editing. So that just seemed like the 12700K would be the best for me without breaking the bank, and it's a little bit of flexing on power. I'm not gonna lie. As far as memory, not 16. My old system was 12, even though it's faster memory. I thought 32. Memory's relatively cheap now, at least compared to a guy whose first memory sticks he had to buy were $100 per megabyte. 64 megs of DDR5 RAM. I'll probably only run it at 4400, maybe 4800, because I've read anything over that, you can get 52, 6000. Even with BIOS updates, it seems like stability goes down. Now I get some people, they need speed, power over stability. I need stability, so I might even run it at 4000, because crash is this thing that will really slow you down, especially during video editing. So that's what I did there. Just for funsies, it still has a DVD drive. Let's see if I ever use it. USB is pretty good. One thing it had that I really want was an SD card reader up here. My laptop will actually take either the small cards or the big. This one's only the big, but of course you can use adapters. Another thing, I needed the headphone jack up front. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 standard USBs here, which is better than 2 in the front from my old system. In the back, we've got more. It does have an Ethernet port, which when I'm doing video uploads, I still rather wired. But it does have wireless into the motherboard, which my old one did not. So that's good for me. And it's got a total of 6 connectors in the back, 1 for standard speakers, 1 for mic, and then 4 for different surround sound speakers. So I could have some fun with that later. That's all just kind of built-in stuff. And where I really went a little heavy, storage. This system, this version, shipped with 1 2 terabyte SSD. It's a M2, and with the slot for another. And it shipped with 1 2 terabyte 7200 RPM hard drive, which is actually kind of funny. When I opened this bad boy up for the first time, because it's me and I've got to disassemble everything, I could not find the hard drive, the HDD. But over here in the left-hand corner, there was an empty bay with cables. I thought, well, I bought this on Amazon. Did I just get fucked? So I had to wait for my wife to come home that day from work, several hours, and I was kind of sweating it. Not a big deal, but I thought, well, if the hard drive's wrong, did I get what I ordered? Did I get a K processor? Did I get the 64 gigs of memory? Blah, blah, blah. Thankfully, when we got her booted up, it's there. Turns out it's hiding up here, married up here with the DVD player. They're kind of best buds. That's great. For one thing, it's there. For another, I've got another hard drive bay. So, I ordered 2 things. I ordered a 1 terabyte SSD to put in the second slot. And I ordered a 16 terabyte digital Western Digital red drive for the second bay is for backup. And my plan on the hard drive, keep the 2 terabyte SSD for, system files. Use the 1 terabyte SSD for kind of work files, clips and stuff that I'm currently on. Maybe even editing from it if it doesn't slow it down, because it should be pretty fast. And then using the second hard drive that it came with, the 7200 RPM HDD, for kind of clip storage, because I like to keep shooting clips and like cat clips for ready use. So I want to keep it there for regular access. And then keep the Western Digital back here as deep storage. And I plan on backing up to it with 16 terabytes on that one drive alone. That'll more than cover my existing files totally. And then I can use my external hard drives, which 2 out of the 3 I still trust. One of them's getting a little long in the tooth. I can use those for duplicate storage. And of course I can always buy another one. But I found that Western Digital half off because, I don't know, it's after Christmas and stuff's cheaper. So I'm going to load this up with up to 4 hard drives. The secondary SSD I may or may not run. I've read that there might be some speed issues, so if it seems like it's slowing down the main one, I can go without it, but it was like $60. So if I don't need it, someone else will. And the 16 gig, terabyte, excuse me, old speak there, was like 250, 260. And it's a Red Pro. They debated the Red Plus, but it was only like $18 cheaper for the Plus. And everyone says the Red Pros are the way to go. I've got files going back to 1998, guys. I do not want to lose them. Duplicates are good. Kind of gets me to what I was doing. I was copying files off one of the external drives yesterday, and I hadn't had enough sleep. And I crushed the wrong folder during deletion, and actually it was about a 1.6 terabyte folder, and I deleted it. And because it was so big, it wasn't in the recycling bin. Now, I ran a recovery software, and it recovered about 1 terabyte of that, but about 600 gigs of videos are just gone. Now, some of them could just be old stuff. It was an older drive, so it wasn't the newer stuff. Still breaks my heart. I'm going to have to go onto YouTube and re-download a lot of that. Luckily, it was all content that had already been uploaded, edited videos, and none of it was raw shooting footage, because unedited footage, even using the old potato we used to have, looks better than compressed stuff from videos. So, yeah, that's my first oopsie, but that was totally on me, not on the system. With that, what about Windows 11? How's it working out? And just in general, how am I liking this system? Well, it was supposed to come in last Wednesday, but because of the poor weather, it didn't make it till last Friday. Much to my wife's chagrin. Yeah, you know me. First thing I did when I had it booted up, set it up, and we had to do it. Now, it's difficult for anyone to go to a new computer. I know that. But guys, it's more difficult for me. I've got to get my speech on there, which, by the way, the newer versions of my text-to-speech wouldn't even work on Windows 7, kept crashing. That's another reason. The first night, I had to call her in way too many times because it was freezing up, not talking. Windows was doing updates because whenever it does that crap. So about once an hour, I had to call her in to tell me what was on the screen. By Saturday, things had improved. I think I only needed to call her in 2 or 3 times the whole day. And yesterday, I don't recollect having to call her in once. One time the computer quit talking, and I don't know why. Again, can't see the screen, guys, so if it quits talking, I'm frozen out. But I thought, a reset might fix her. Luckily, the power button is set to turn it off. And did that, and turned it back on, and boom, there's my pin screen, put my pin in, and it's working. So I don't know why it quit talking yesterday. Sometimes just little things like that happen with any system. Yesterday was fun. I uninstalled Microsoft Edge. Does Microsoft or Windows want you to do that? Oh, no. But it did. And I'm telling you, it sped things up. It kept saying, well, you can no longer use widgets. Good. I don't want to use widgets. I looked at the memory management. It saved me like 1 full gig of memory, just not even having Edge pulled up, just running. So taking it off. Now, I know it might try to come back with updates, and I'm ready to combat that. But one nice thing about Windows 11 Pro, you can manually set updates or even tell them, hey, don't do updates for a week or a month. And you just kind of keep doing that for a while. Home, you probably can, but it's harder to do. Same thing goes for like passwords and pins on Pro. It's easier to set that or not even, because I don't want a password. A pin, that's fine. Mine's easy. Just, because I'm here and secure. And the thing is, if someone got this computer, they're going to find a bunch of Smashing Pumpkins albums. Everything's online, and I don't store my passwords. I can type them in, like Google and stuff, so they're not going to get anywhere. There's no credit card data on here. So, how's it going? I like it. So far, and I'm still learning because it's different. I like 11 more than 10. I think the memory on here is really helping it run faster, but I do think it's just faster. It doesn't seem like the install of Windows is taking as much space up on the hard drive, and it just seems like it's playing better with my current version of speech. I was planning on using this for doing gun logouts and important stuff, going to Gunbroker maybe next week. But you know what? After 3 days, and there's still some snafus to work out, I'm sure we'll hit. But I think it's ready today. I think after 3 days, we can try it tonight when my employee gets here to log out guns. We can always plug back in the old system if we need to, but we're going to give it a go tonight. I was surprised my old bound book software, which you had to kind of trick it into running on Windows 7 because it was originally designed for XP. Again, accounting software, bound book software, it's based on Microsoft Excel. For one thing, it has to be, or is it Access? It has to be approved by the ATF, slow to change. For another, you get used to it, simple. I had to trick it onto running on the old 7 machine. I just installed it on the 11 and it popped right up with my database and everything. It took longer to find the old install file in my archives than it did to install it. So I've read that Windows 11 has improved backwards compatibility, and maybe it does. So far, that was awesome. Also, for nostalgia's sake, I put Winamp on here. Old timers will get it. I've got to have it, even if I don't use it much. It is a slick MP3 player, and it has really good keyboard controls. So I did that for fun. Otherwise, took off a few bloatware programs, all the Dell crap, and luckily they're kind of backing off on Cortana with Windows 11 versus 10, which is, again, something I like. It's fast, and I'm glad I went with the higher memory. I'm glad I did extra hard drives, especially after screwing up yesterday, seeing the importance of really redundant backups even when you're doing that, because anything can happen. And I'm liking this 12th gen processor. I did some testing. I like to use VSDC. It works well with my speech as a video editing software, and it's pretty good. And it's only like $20 a year. And I'm sure Adobe's better, but I don't really know how well I could utilize it. So I tried some video editing on it, and it is noticeably faster. It's probably 4 times faster than the old system, and that's setting it at high res. I haven't tried to do full 4K or 8K yet, but I have done Ultra HD, and it spit out the video very quickly and just seems to run well. The funny thing is I was running into kind of my speech, and it would sometimes crash each other. Luckily, the recovery is super easy. I learned on the old system, just turn the speech off and restart it, and they're both fine. The video software doesn't crash itself. It just kind of hangs up. Even with all the improvements, new version of the video software, new version of the speech, new version of Windows, they still do it. But at this point, it's just kind of one of those adorable little quirks that, you learn. If it hangs, what it does is when I'm adding all the files, because usually when I do project files, there's quite a few video clips, it'll hang while adding them and kind of quit reading. The whole system doesn't lock up, but it quits reading when the video editing software window. So I just turn off speech. It'll make a bonk noise because it is tied up, and then it'll go through. So we're gonna try it tonight. See how it goes. I don't like changing. I'm definitely glad I skipped Windows 8, and I'm kind of glad I'm jumping past 10 for the most part and going straight to 11, because this system, this OS, should be serviced up until 2030, at least 2028, and that'll be the life of the system. I mean, I hope it lasts a while, and that's why I tried to do stuff like a reasonably good processor, at least 4 different areas, just to hard drives inside plus outside, and it has 4 memory ports on the motherboard. So theoretically, I could go to 128 of memory. Although with DDR5, using all 4 to go to 128's kind of an iffy proposition. So I don't think I'll need to. I looked at system resources, doing video editing and running a couple of Google Chrome windows and my speech. We were at 20 to 30% processor utilization, and memory, we were dipping down to, I'm trying to think here, about 50 to 45 gigs, or terabytes, excuse me, no gigs, I'm tired now, free. So it was sucking up, anywhere from 10 to 15, maybe up to 20 if I really pushed it. So plenty of memory left over for the future. The virtual memory was still doing well. Wi-Fi reception is really good with this. Sound is good. I have noticed with my old headphones, because them being relatively cheap, there's a bit of hum interference. But I did try a decent pair of headphones from Bose, and they didn't have it. So I may have to upgrade my headphone standards as I've done everything else. But I need either a set that's cheap enough I can buy two of, or one set that's really battery efficient that can go for, well over 8 hours and charge in under that time, because otherwise, it won't work for me personally. And wired headphones, I'm too used to wireless. I will walk off and yank the wire every time nowadays. And I've got the speakers on the keyboard as a backup, but I don't like the whole house hearing what I'm typing. Erotica porn. You know that me. I'm real risque. They probably get bored of what I do, actually. So, even though Friday night was a bit stressful for the wife and I, and Saturday was a little stressful, it's coming together pretty well. About as good as I could have hoped. But it is missing one thing. Gotta put Caesar on it. He's actually heavy enough the cats don't really knock him over. But yeah, if you've noticed, I haven't posted a lot of videos on this channel. I had a couple of backlog ones. Part of it was I didn't really have computer access for a couple of days because of switching over. Part of it is I was more distracted by figuring out this new one. But I've done a couple of test videos, and this will probably be the first one edited fully on this computer, but not on this table, that we'll give it a go. So let me know how you like it. I'm going to play around with resolutions and stuff too, and I thought you might be interested in it. I guess this isn't a black box because I never turned the camera off. It's just the visuals. But I will do an actual black box talking about our night without heat and some other fun things that happened, including the light in our living room breaking and fixing it. So that was fun. That was interesting, I guess. But so far, I'm liking this XPS. What do you think? I'm not shilling for Dell, I swear. Although, they do have money. I'm open to selling out for the right money. But no, these are my last 3 generations of desktops. So, this one from late 09 through 15. This one late 15 through the very beginning of 2023. And this one from the beginning of 2023 to 2030, or with my luck, the end of 2023. Let's just hope there's not another tornado or power surge. Backups are good. Thread protectors are great. Battery backups for desktops have saved my bacon so many times. Better to blow out a $200 protector than a $1,000, $2,000 PC, especially with your data. It's not so much that the PCs are valuable, it's what's on them. Now I know there's cloud storage and stuff, but when it comes to things like FFL files, bound book files, man, I don't want to put that on the cloud. I know it's secure, but just because I intellectually know it, I don't want customer records getting out there one way or the other. So I'm going to keep them here, external hard drives if we have to, encrypted files, but that's just me. But these have all been good machines. Using this one, like I said, I bought it right after I got married, within a year, and started Ozark Bare Arms on it, the business, and the YouTube channel. Although back then, Jay did quite a bit on his home computer too. And this one we bought right after moving, and that's really when I expanded the business. And my first Swiss imports, aside from the M+Ms, came on this one. And really expanded the YouTube channel. And quit scratching the couch. And made it through COVID on it, and was here and lost my father. But they're a lot. You think about these boxes that just sit there quietly humming away. This one, I don't know, but it's had an eventful start. It got delayed because of a snowstorm, and had my wife about ready to kill me the first night. But it was a lot of fun to research and kind of getting back into the computer game. And I don't think I'm abnormal in that when it comes to a lot of things. I tune out when I'm not in the market, but then dip back in every 5-6 years to do it. And it's not just computers. Guns can be the same way. Any kind of electronics. I'm trying to think what else. Some of my hobby stuff, sometimes I won't really touch, like Hobby Master for a while and then come back in. You know, it's good because if you follow it day to day, you get burned out, you get old. And so it was fun to poke around researching computers for about a month. Even though my knowledge is a few years out of date, having that base to know what RAM and DDR4 or 5 cache, it helps. Because you can always build on what you already know. But so far so good. We'll see how tonight goes. But if it does, this one I will probably refurbish. Clean it, new fresh Windows install, maybe update the RAM to at least 16 gigs, and then probably let a family member use. Because again, I don't really want or believe in being wasteful. This one, like I said, is essentially a shell. About the only component major left in it is the motherboard itself, which isn't worth a whole lot because it's Dell. I even stripped the processor out a long time ago, and the memory hard drive I needed because of what was on it. But this one will probably have a few more things stripped off, and then the chassis will be tossed in the landfill unless someone needs it. We'll see. But that's what I've been up to. Wish me luck in the future. Hopefully all goes according to plan, which, to be fair, it never does, but not too badly, guys. But once we get this video thing put on and done, hopefully output will creep back up again, and I do have quite a few new things for this channel and the main Misha channel coming. Actually, Fox is getting my wife's old computer, which is slightly newer than this one, so with him having a desktop and J-Ro and me, we should be able to do pretty well for both channels, all things going forward. Anywho, if you could, please like, share, and subscribe, and if you'd like to help support, because I do have a credit card to pay for now, you know, you can go over and check out the Patreon page. It's under Misha, but it's all me. It's all kind of the same jobber. I promise not to spend Patreon money on Star Wars toys too often. This is Misha. Catch you very soon next time.